Well, hey everyone, happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I am Katie, joined by Chris and John. Hey
You're
fellas,
back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Oh, Chris, you missed the high five.
It's a half
It
five.
happens.
The
It's a
2.5.
half five. And I'm back. Yeah, last week I was out, and next week, for those of you who observe, it is the 4th of July holiday in the United States, and so there will be no live stream next week. But this week, which is why you're here, we're talking about generative AI best practices for building GPTs. So we'll be covering why generative AI custom models need maintenance. This is really important. Why generative AI best practices, what they look like for building and maintaining GPT and GPT-like systems, and how to collect and process data to feed a GPT. And if I'm not mistaken, Chris, today we are updating Katie GPT, which I am like super excited about. She
That is
needs some
correct.
work. Katie GPT and Katie IRL both need work, but today we're focused on Katie GPT.
I was gonna say I can't fix a Katie IRL.
Listen, nobody can. That's a lost cause. So let's focus on what we can control, which is Katie GPT. So where should we start?
Okay, let's start. Huge surprise with the 5P framework, which you can
What?
download now.
I didn't
Since
see that coming.
Exactly. So, what's really important here, because the first edition of Katie GPT was kind of an Swiss Army knife, if you will, and since it's come out, you've had a chance to use it. So I want you to talk through what you think the purpose of KDGPT is now versus what we originally built it for.
So my purpose is to be using Katie GPT as, let me see, how do I say, as an uncomplicated version of Katie IRL, meaning Katie GPT can't overthink it. Katie GPT knows the same things that I know, but she can't overthink it. So if I ask her a question, she's going to give me an answer, and she's not going to hem and haw and be like, well, but what about this? It's like, so the purpose of Katie GPT is to understand and have the same expertise as Katie IRL, but to be more efficient with delivering the information and brainstorming.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Now, in terms of outcomes and outputs, the performance side, what is KDGPT supposed to create?
She is supposed to create. So how I've been using is for, I've been doing some brainstorming. I've been doing some, blog ideas or content ideas. The challenge I've been running into is that her scope of knowledge is limited. And so that I think comes from being the beta version of Katie GPT. I would love to be able to use her to, help outline, longer form content, to help think through, productizing certain things based on my area of expertise in product development. And that information just isn't in that large language model at this time. The majority of what she knows is what I've written about in the newsletter, which is helpful, but that in and of itself is limited in scope.
Yep. So you outlined some things that I think are really important to discuss, because GPTs, aka customized versions of large language models, like GPTs in OpenAI or GEMS in Google Gemini, etc., really are narrow purpose applications. They're like the weather app on your phone, which means that trying to get them to do too much or too many things, they're going to do none of them well. They are better off built to have very specific use cases. So, for example, on the previous episode, we talked about building an ideal customer profile, right? And really focusing on what that thing can do. It just can behave like a customer. You can talk to it and ask questions of it, but it behaves like a customer but it will not do, say, strategy, because that's not what it's trained to do. Katie GPT sounds actually like it could be a couple different applications, one for things like strategy and business, and you have a very different training data set than a tool that learns how to write like you, that can sound like you. And so I think it would be worthwhile to when you're building out these things, if you are building out these types of applications, to consider how narrow a scope do you want it to have, right? Is it going to be, big? Is it going to be one thing? And the closer it is to doing that one thing, the better it's going to perform, because the short-term memory, the system instructions that these tools can handle in GPTs, OpenAI GPTs, is very limited compared to what you can do, say, in other platforms like Gemini or Anthropic or Poe. So you have to have some knowledge of the platform to know what the limitations are, but the purpose and the performance have to come first.
Right. And so, if you want to go through this exercise yourself, we do have a downloadable PDF at trustinsights.ai/5P framework, which walks you through at a high level how to approach the 5Ps. Now, you're absolutely right. So so there is more than one purpose in my mind, because my everyday job has more than one purpose. And I think the challenge I've been running into trying to use the existing version of Katie GPT is that she wasn't trained to do more than one thing. The initial purpose was to help with, writing content, to help with newsletter writing. And even that, like, she does a decent job. Like, she has my voice. There's some things that are still very AI specific, like in an ever changing world. And I'm like, I've literally never said that. And you can tell that's where the AI is coming in. Um, but the things that she's been trained on, the content is still so narrow that I think we're now at a point where I'm just getting the same response from her over and over again. And so I've kind of shelved her for a minute.
To give you a sense of how narrow these things can go, let me bring up just my notebook of some of the prompts I have. There are prompts that do just one thing. Like, here's a prompt that, this is extensive, it's several pages long, just to write song lyrics, because it turns out writing song lyrics is actually a very complicated thing. So as we start thinking about Katie GPT 2.0, or I guess 2.5 or whatever, we want to be very specific about what it is that she's going to do. Even something as simple as possibly breaking her into pieces, like Katie GPT will have a version that just does Slack question of the day, right? And doesn't do other stuff. So how would you like to approach the re-architecture of Katie GPT? What do you want this to do?
This is such a loaded question. But no, I think that there should be a version that does the content creation. So that's the version that helps with the newsletter, with blog posts, and then that information I feel like does translate into question of the day. So for those who don't know what that means, so every day in our free analytics Slack group, trustinsights.ai/analytics marketer, free to join, I pose a question of the day. Monday through Thursday, they are work related. Fridays, they are unhinged. And especially when I'm on vacation, or I'm going to be going on vacation, I like to pre-program these questions. And I do sort of look to Katie GPT to help me brainstorm some of them. And I feel like knowing our ICP, knowing the way that I speak, how I write, lends itself to generating those questions. So I feel like it's appropriate to have content creation and question of the day in one version, and then breaking out strategy and product development into a different version.
Right. So the existing version of Katie GPT has these instructions. You will act as Katie. Here's Katie's bio, the context, rules and things, values, parts, some background information on Katie's writing techniques, specific components of writing style. There's a lot in here, and this was built under the GPT-4 model. So the original GPT-4 model. One of the things that is so important to do is, when a new model comes out, to regenerate your prompts, because the latent space, aka the long-term memory of a model, changes with each model. They get new data, they get fresher information, stuff like that. And the architecture inside changes. If we think of a model like a library, and our system here, the prompting system, like the librarian, if you assume that when the model changes, the librarian does the same things, that may not be true, because they may have added a new wing on the library, right? Some books may have been retired from the library. And as a result, what made your prompt work well in the old version is not necessarily what's going to work in the new version. And just copying and pasting your old prompt to the new system may deliver subpar results. Some people have commented with OpenAI's new GPT-4 Omni model that prompts and GPTs that they had that were working great just blew up. They just stopped working. They went off the rails because the underlying architecture changed. So every time a model comes out in the system of your choice, you've got to rebuild your most important prompts essentially from scratch. You will have, and you should have, all the training data and all the preparation prompts for that, but you're going to have to rebuild the process itself from scratch if you want to take advantage of it and have it behave reliably within its own model.
No, and
So
that makes sense. Yeah.
So to get started, this is going to be a writing assistant, right? It's going to essentially be a writing assistant. We're going to start, we're going to use the Trust Insights Race Framework, Role, Action, Context, Execute, and the Trust Insights Pair Framework, Prime, Augment, Refresh, Evaluate, to build the background information for this. So we're going to start off by saying you're a Pulitzer Prize winning author who specializes in nonfiction books and literature, especially business, marketing, and strategy. Your first task is to outline the major components of successful writing style. So what we are doing is we've told the librarian, go into the library and tell me what is important about writing style. What does this model know about writing style? You will notice that there's stuff in here that was not in the previous version, right? And there's stuff in the previous version that's not in here as well. We are seeing some things like pacing and rhythm, etc. I don't see some of the more technical things in here, which is kind of interesting. So I'm going to ask about that. What about more technical aspects like diction, flow, rhythm, and pacing?
That was in there.
The pacing was in there, but diction, I didn't see diction in there. And so what we are doing is, instead of us having to write out this whole prompt ourselves, we are essentially having the language model build the prompt for us, right? So we are asking it to pre-populate its short-term memory of this conversation with all the major words that you would want to have in a final prompt. So this is really the heart of the pair framework. The next thing we're going to do, and this is something I need to figure out how to update the pair framework, is we're going to ask it what not to do. So we're going to say, great, what things do novice business writers often do wrong that expert business writers avoid? And what this is really part of, I would call it the refresh step in the pair framework. We're asking it to come up with guidelines for what not to do as a writer, because just as much as there are things you should do, there are things that you should avoid. And these tools, they're word prediction machines. So the more that they understand directionally, we're creating like a contrastive prompt saying, don't do this stuff. This is the stuff to avoid.
So
Now,
does this prompt, is this something that I would need to give to the GPT every time, or is this something that gets loaded? Okay. I'm getting ahead of you.
Yes, in fact, you're going to see how exactly we're going to put this together. So we're going to now evaluate some stuff. So great. Next, I'm going to provide you with the writing sample of Katie Robert, CEO. Please evaluate and describe her writing style using the criteria you've outlined, such that we can truly understand her writing style component by component. And now we're going to take, unsurprisingly, the cold opens from the newsletter. And we're going to start with the cold opens. This is the last year's worth of cold opens. So going back to July of 2023.
Okay.
Diction, precision, specificity, flow, rhythm, sentence length variation, punctuation for effect, pacing, strategic pauses, structure and organization, tone, engagement and personalization, examples and case study, data-driven insights, reflective analysis, adaptable strategies, balanced perspectives. So that's essentially a nice description of your writing style. I'm going to take that and I'm actually going to copy that and store that in a text document because that whole thing is very helpful. Next, we're also going to give it some questions of the day. One of Katie's responsibilities is creating a question of the day, QOTD, for our analytics or marketers Slack community. Katie writes these every day. What elements of her writing style are at play in these short form pieces? Now let's go ahead and attach that, go into our repository here and pull up our question of the day. This is all of them going back to the beginning of the Slack group. So now we are talking about 5 years worth.
Yeah, we recently hit some sort of milestone. I should know this off the top of my head, but my brain is jammed with a lot of information today. But I know we recently hit some sort of annual milestone.
It's not about us. It's about the clients. That's all.
That's right. It's about the community and what they get out of it. It's not about me remembering anything.
All right. So now we've got a really good analysis of your question of the day writing style.
Mhm.
It's a masterclass in short form content, Katie.
Well, thank you, Katie GPT. Katie IRL agrees. It's like we're simpatico.
It's working. It's working.
Oh, that is fantastic. She gets me. All right. So what are we doing next?
So now I'm saying I'm asking you to prepare a comprehensive, complete, thorough, unabridged outline of Katie Robert's writing style that you would give to a ghostwriter to emulate her style. So what we're doing here, outlines are essentially a priming representation. So about, I think a year ago, we were talking about this as a system of prompting. When you write an outline, you are essentially giving a framework to a system, and that system can then reference it back and forth and stay on the rails. Whereas if you just gave somebody just a wall of text, it's very hard to keep track of what you're supposed to be doing. We have that experience as humans, right? We're like, you give me too many things to do. This outline are the rules for how Katie GPT should sound. Great. In terms of the topics Katie has written about in the past, please make an outline of the broad categories. So now we're going to ask it. So I'm going to copy that outline because we're going to want to hold on to that. And now I'm asking the things that you've written about: business strategy and operations, change management, marketing, data analytics and insights, governance and compliance, personal and professional development, customer experience and engagement, technology and innovation, industry-specific topics, community engagement. This is great. What other adjacent topics is Katie likely to be able to write about based on her current expertise? So now we're going to ask it to expand on these areas. What other things could you be writing about? There's project management, agile, scrum, Kanban, risk management, entrepreneurship and startups, IT governance, cybersecurity, perhaps. So now we're going to ask it to weld these two things together.
Man, I've got my work cut out for me.
Okay, so we're going to say now combine Katie's existing categories and topics along with the adjacent things to build out a total list of all the stuff that you can and should be writing about.
Now I
This
know how
alone
you
was
feel,
probably helpful.
John, every time I assign all this stuff to you.
Here's the list.
I'm sorry, Chris, you were saying.
No, I said, this alone might be helpful for you to have, just to have, in addition
Yeah.
to Katie GPT being programmed with it. You might want to have a copy of this just for yourself.
Oh, I definitely do, because I mean, I'm the first one to say every week I stare at, the blank screen and go, what the heck am I going to write about this week? Because I'm me and I'm the one doing the writing, it all kind of blurs together for me after a while. And I don't necessarily feel like I'm giving the same topics a fresh take. And so this is going to be helpful for me to get out of that rut of feeling like I'm writing the same thing over and over again, because I'm looking at this list. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff on here I don't think I've covered.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But it's all still relevant. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So what we want to do next is we want to have this rebuild the system instructions themselves. And the prompt for that looks like this. I want you to convert this conversation into a prompt to be used with a large language model like ChatGPT. Format the prompt as system instructions. The purpose of the prompt is to instruct the LLM to be Katie GPT, performing tasks such as writing a question of the day or writing a newsletter cold open. Write the system instructions in second person imperative. So now, taking into account everything that we have talked about, this part is really critical.
Mm-hmm.
When you regenerate prompts, you want the machine, the current model, to write the prompt for itself, because it is using its own latent space knowledge to know what words and phrases will invoke the correct responses. If I were to copy and paste, say, a prompt written in Gemini into ChatGPT, it's not going to go as well, because Gemini has different books in its library. There's many of the same books like business and stuff like that, but the specific words that trigger a response in Gemini are not the specific words that are going to trigger a response in ChatGPT. So now we have our system instructions. This system instructions file is 5,000 characters, right? It is fairly extensive, which is terrific. Let's go ahead and go into our GPT mode now. We're going to create a new GPT. We're going to call this Katie GPT 2.0. The better, faster, stronger Katie GPT. Did I get that right, John?
That's it. Better.
All right.
Stronger. Oh, no. Better, stronger, faster.
Better, stronger, faster.
Steve Austin approved wording. $6 million.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, we want to be Steve Austin approved.
All right. Those system instructions that I just had it spit 5,000 characters out, boom, they go right in there. And so that's going to be the starting point. We're then going to add our knowledge files, right? So we've decided we have Katie's topics, and we have Katie's writing style in detail. So we're now providing this. So these are ChatGPT condensed versions of what it knows about your writing style. You'll notice that we don't have the examples this time through. We have instead the guidelines that we want it to behave like. We're going to go ahead and let's do a conversation starter. Let's start with some ideas for the QOTD. And let's start with some ideas for this week's newsletter. And
so is this building on the existing custom GPT? Like, do we still have all of the, here's what the company's about, here's the value? So all of that needs to be rebuilt.
that's not in here.
Okay. Why not? That's the part that I guess I'm a little confused on, because we spent a lot of time putting that information in. Is that no longer relevant?
We spent a lot of time putting that information in, but what you were experiencing is essentially lock-in to substantial amounts of repetition. So you were saying like it keeps saying the same things over and over again. It can't come up with any new topics and stuff. And part of that is because the more you put into the initial prompts and the knowledge-based system, the more it's going to triangulate on that.
Okay.
and say, okay, this, I have to always write to this audience. I have to always write to a mid market enterprise CEO or CMO and so on and so forth. So this time through, we're using your existing writing as the example of how to write, and we've gotten the topics adjacent to what you've already written about, but we have not said you are the CEO of Trust Insights. You're all of these important pieces. We're going to test this out and see how it does, and then if it does well, we'll leave it as is. If you experience a lot of hallucinations and things, it starts inventing like who you are, then we need to go back and refine that, because unsurprisingly, this is a software development lifecycle. So it's iteration.
Who knew?
All right, so we're gonna save the Katie GPT 2.0. Now we're not going to make this available in the GPT store. Other people cannot use Katie.
No.
Okay. And let's just tap on. Let's start with some ideas for this week's newsletter and see what it comes up with.
Hello, insightful readers. Hello, community. See, and it's funny, and obviously that's stuff that I can easily edit, but that's what kind of cracks me up a little bit about how you can see that it's still very AI driven. Because it's from where I sit, it's trying its best to sound human, but it has such limited knowledge of what that means that it's like, hey, pals. It sounds like the mom that's trying to sound cool, but just isn't quite getting it.
Let's see. Where's that Steve Buscemi clip? The hello, fellow cool kids.
Exactly. That's what it sounds like.
So we've now got Katie GPT 2.0. You'll notice we have not removed 1.0. 1.0 is still there. So if you want to go back and use it and compare the two, and in fact, I would encourage that you compare the two side by side. You say, like, I want to do a prompt about the newsletter this week and see how they perform. Sort of A/B test them. Again, this is best practices for software development.
Right. Well, yeah, because you never just want to say, okay, I built the thing. Here we go into production. Like, that's a terrible idea if you're doing software development. You always need to test it, especially if you have done it correctly and you've put together your requirements, which in this case would be the 5 Ps. And so in this instance with Katie 2.0, the purpose, at least for the content one, is to help write better newsletter content. So ideation, and then generate the questions of the day. And so I would need to go back and say, okay, did it do that? Because I know from using 1.0 or 1.5 or whatever she is, the original version, the questions of the day, I get the exact same ones every time, no matter how I ask for them. And it's a little frustrating because it's very limited.
Yep. And again, part of that also is the architecture of ChatGPT itself. When you're building these custom GPTs, you are given 6,000 characters to build your system instructions. And then the rest you have to provide as supporting knowledge. Here's the catch. The supporting knowledge is not a prompt. It is a reference library. So it is a system that's called retrieval augmented generation. Basically means that, again, if we think of a language model like a library and ChatGPT is a librarian, when you add knowledge documents here, you're not telling the librarian how to do their job better. That's the system instructions. This is saying, hey, librarian, there's another wing of the library with some new books in it. Go look. If the system instructions are bad, adding more knowledge won't make it better, right? It's adding more data to a broken system will not make it better. So you'd have to refine the core system instructions first to know how to behave better, and then you can add more relevant knowledge. But a lot of people make the mistake of believing, oh, if I just add more stuff in knowledge, it's going to get smarter. It won't get smarter. If the librarian's shows up drunk to work, you can adding more wings to the library won't improve things. The library will be drunk in more places in the library.
Well, that's a very colorful analogy.
Obviously not my town library, that's for sure.
But that's the process for building or rebuilding one of these things. And so I know there are folks out there who have made hundreds of GPTs. However, if you don't maintain them and upgrade them with the libraries, their performance degrades or suddenly becomes unpredictable. And the same thing is true in Google Gemini. The same thing is true in Anthropic Claude. Claude just had a new model come out. It's Claude Sonnet 3.5. Different architecture, different system. Gemini just switched models last night. Gemini 1.5 now is the 2 million token model as the default. The two 1.5s behave differently. So if you wrote prompts for 1.5, the old version, and now there's this new version, you should go back and maintain those prompts.
So what does it look? So I feel like, and maybe because this is what we did the first time, the writing version of the large language model seems straightforward to me. What does it look like to start to put together the strategy and product development version? Like, how do you start to prompt that to build the instructions for, Katie GPT product development or whatever it is?
We would do something very similar. So let's go ahead into ChatGPT. We're going to go back to our straight for Omni model. We're going to start off with a similar question. It says what are the awards in product development? Anyone know?
I mean, I don't think companies that I used to work for didn't submit for awards.
Okay. Let's go. We're awarding product manager. Product market fit, product strategy, business strategy. What are some other things about product management that this award-winning product manager would know?
Oh, the Stevie Awards do have that segment.
Oh, the Stevie Awards.
Okay, Stevie Award. And remember, we say that specifically because we're telling in a prompt, when you use something like an award name, you're going to lock down to essentially invoke tokens that have been related to pages that have that text. So other Stevie Awards would be some of the things it would invoke. What else would this product manager know, Katie?
Voice of customer.
Okay. What else?
Product development.
Okay. Your first task is to outline the best practices for product development. What kind of products? Like for a B2B management consulting firm?
Yeah, that seems like a good place to start.
Specifically, services and products for a B2B management consulting firm. So we prime the model. Let's see what it comes up with. Understand the market and customer needs, define a clear value proposition, develop a robust product strategy, collaborate cross-functionally, leverage technology and innovation, focus on quality and excellence, effective communication and marketing, measure success and ROI, adapt and scale, ethics and compliance. So those are the 10 best practice areas of product management. What's missing?
User testing. It's been a minute since I've done this. What do you think, John? Product fit. What from your perspective, John? What do you think?
Yeah, user testing, UX UI review.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember all the crazy testing stuff though. What's the deal? There's that line between automated testing versus
unit testing.
It's like when you throw it at these, because there's these tools that will like behave like 10 million users in a half hour and give you like all the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
I'm old. I forget things now.
No, it's funny. It's been about 15 years since I've done that kind of testing. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
There's a whole tribe of people that like are masters in that space, and the rest of us just watch on.
But I think at least for this large language model, the important thing is to make sure that there is an acknowledgement that, we don't want to build a model that is creating solutions in search of a problem. So we want to make sure that we're addressing the pain points from our ICPs.
Mm-hmm. One thing it really didn't do a good job of elaborating on was like the actual creativity. Like how do you come up with ideas for products? Because you had said you like to use this for brainstorming, so we should probably have at least some brainstorming techniques and things in here so that it has a sense of what that should look like. You said
Yeah.
where.
Well, I was going to say, because, in thinking about it, the way that I'd like to be using this large language model is so, you come to me on a Monday morning and say, hey, I have this idea. I would love to be able to iterate it with, the product development model to be like, okay, what do we need to know? What do we need to flesh out with this idea? How do we start to put it together and make sure that it's like a repeatable, sellable thing that people actually want? Like, what are we missing?
So we're going to ask it, how do we avoid a solution in search of a problem situation? Okay, and now we're going to ask as our refresh statement, what are some common mistakes companies and novice product managers make in product development? So we want to know essentially what not to do.
Right.
Lack of market research, misalignment with needs, poor fit, inadequate planning and strategy, ineffective communication and collaboration, overcomplicating the product. I do that a lot. Ignoring UX. Let's see. Underestimating the importance of marketing and sales, overlooking metrics and performance tracking. Okay, so this is actually a decent mirror of stuff. Budget overruns, resource management. Okay, great. Based on everything we've talked about so far, create a comprehensive, complete, unabridged outline of the best practices for product development for a B2B management consulting company. So now we're going to build the priming representation, aka the outline of what this thing should be doing. And you can see there's a lot of the things that we've talked about mentioned showing up in the outline.
Because I'm sort of imagining like, hey, Katie, product manager, GPT, I have an idea for a thing. What do I need? What do we need to do to start, building it out? What questions are we missing? Because I feel like that's a really useful thing as we're figuring out what does the next iteration of Trust Insights look like in the age of AI.
Right.
If I give it jazz hands, then it seems more mysterious.
That's it. The KDGPT is influencing you. You're getting more the age of AI.
Okay, so we're going to now convert this into system instructions. We're going to convert this outline into prompt. The purpose of this prompt is to instruct the element to be Katie PM GPT.
Perfect.
A product development and product management expert. Katie PM GPT will assist the user in developing and refining products and services aligned with the best practices of product development. And we're going to, of course, specify we want the instructions written in second person imperative. Now, I've also saved the PM stuff here because we want that in our library. So you are Katie PM GPT, a product management expert, market research, define customer value, develop a robust strategy. All right. Okay, we're going to copy that. Let's go into our Explore GPTs, go to create. We're going to create Katie PM GPT. Okay. Chris came to me with another harebrained idea. Let's discuss whether it's viable or not. And we're going to upload our PM library. And now we can hit go. Let's make sure it says the link. Okay, let's give it a view. Now let's give it a shot here. Katie PM GPT is going to be very, very verbose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so his idea is to create a cottage industry of making AI curated speaker reels and AI generated background music to sell to other keynote speakers. We may need to revise that prompt, I think, because let's see.
Yeah, she doesn't need to repeat herself that much.
Exactly.
Like we get it. We get that there's best practices. Like, settle down, lady. Like, let's get the idea out there first. Her first question should be, great, what's the harebrained idea? Instead of being like, and here's everything.
Exactly. So let's take a look at the PM instructions here and see what it says.
Man, now I know why my old development teams used to hate me.
Process. Like, no.
I mean, she's not wrong, but man, like, let me get my ideas out first before you throw in the best practices at me. Now it's all full circle. This is why they used to sort of, roll their eyes at me or anytime they would bring me something. Man, she's still going.
So we're going to modify this to ask clarifying questions from the idea, but don't evaluate the idea in totality. Rather, advise the user slowly, step by step, waiting for user input to your clarifying questions. So we're adding some control instructions because if you look in the prompt here, what's missing is that it just said use the following comprehensive outline as a guide, and it interpreted like just rigidly live by that. So let's go to edit our GPT.
Which I think is an important note, because I think that's where people get frustrated with using generative AI in the first place, is it's going to do exactly what you said. And if you're not specific with your language, or if you don't know what you want, you're not going to get something other than exactly what you asked for. And we just witnessed this. This is a much better way to start the conversation. Everybody's in a better mood already. John, I can see you're going to get a lot of use out of this too.
It's just fun to like incite fights amongst versus Katie PM GPT.
Exactly. So we start off with, Chris has this idea of using this. So let's break it down step by step. Oh, boy.
Man, she is an aggressive one.
She is.
I mean, I respect it, but my goodness, lady.
Exactly.
She is relentless.
She is. But, what we would need to do, we have about 800 characters left. So we probably want us to go back and revise that system instruction again to give it a better understanding of what to do with the outline, to sort of step through it one piece at a time. It's like, okay, first, has Chris done his market research? Second, does Chris know what the voice of this customer says? And so on and so forth, rather than dumping the entire outline all at once.
She's very much a 27-year-old, hot-headed Katie versus a more pragmatic, more experienced in her career version of Katie.
Exactly. But that's how you would build that. And this is just using the latent space of the model, which means that if you had your own documents, your own writings about product development and stuff like that, you would want to incorporate that into the prompt creation itself, because you would want it to have to be your unique point of view on product development. So for example, I'm in the midst of writing the next edition of my AI book, and I have given it essentially 2 years worth of newsletters and YouTube videos. And my specific instructions to it are, where and when possible, copy and paste my exact words, right? So just try not to write anything original, just literally copy and paste. And so because I have that unique data, the output is going to sound a lot more like me and a lot less like an AI. So that's for any of these GPTs or whatever you want to call them. The more unique data, the better it's going to be, the better it's going to sound the way you want it to sound.
Well, and it makes me think, when I was a product manager, we had, dozens of SOPs. We had our software development lifecycle. We had our project lifecycle. We had our sort of laws we abide by as the PMO. Like all of that information probably goes into that, that product development version. And then, with the writing version, we have like style guide and target audience and all of those pieces. Like, and here's the platforms I typically tend to write for. Here's how it works on LinkedIn versus here's how it works in the newsletter. And, including all of that additional detail, if I wanted to get really specific, to have it to the point where it's just doing it for me.
Exactly. I have one of these for examining scopes of work. And so I've provided it our template and our MSA. And that way, when we work on a new scope, I can hand that scope to the model and say, evaluate it against these criteria. Does it have this? Does it, does it require electronic payment? A signature for electronic payment, all the things that are unique to us. So anytime you're building one of these things, again, it's like software development. Yes, we did it very quickly in 45 minutes, but the more you bring of you to any of these tools, the better you're going to like the outputs and stuff. So I'd say your homework assignment, Katie, is to now go in and hack on Katie GPT in her various new incarnations to make her behave more like you, so that at no point are you like, I'm just going to shelve her. She's just not working. Instead, now that you know the process, say, okay, now better, faster, stronger. I'm going to rebuild her.
I mean, first and foremost, I'm going to go into Katie PM GPT and say, step number 1, settle down. John, what kind of GPTs? Like, if you were to create John GPT, what would John GPT do?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. I mean, one of the big problems, right, is John IRL is Black Swan Hunter. It's like I'm always working with prospects to outline something new and figure out what's going on. So there's not much that I can use to make my daily life easier as far as writing and coming up with stuff. It's definitely useful for webinar invites, doing other copy. Chris has been kind enough to, run some of our standard scopes through the models to get them to be, the big thing is missing points. It does get verbose, just like you noticed with the stuff that it's cranking out for you. But the thing is, like, it never misses the 12 critical points. And I'm classic for missing 3 of the 12 when I'm putting together lists of stuff. That just, my human brain is not going to match that. So yeah, having John GPT to make sure that I don't miss the bullet points that are relevant, especially in a scope where, we deliver stuff and people pay for it. That's critical.
I think
All
that
right.
makes sense.
Well, we have our work cut out for us. You have your work cut out for you for doing your homework to build these GPTs or whatever the architecture they're called. So until next time, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast. And a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.